Cook. A historical fiction of love, identity and fate by S.J. Jeppsson. Chapter 33. The Grand Engagement Ball. Weatherby House, Long Island, New York. Saturday, April 27th, 1912. The night of the Weatherby Ball arrived with an air of majestic anticipation. From the sprawling lawns of Weatherby House, carriages gleamed under the gaslit glow, their polished brass fixtures catching the light as they rolled down the winding cobblestone drive. Footmen in crisp navy blue livery stood at attention, assisting guests as they stepped onto the red-carpeted entrance, their laughter and conversations blending into a symphony of wealth and status. Among the first to arrive that evening was Miss Caroline Cabot, the very picture of New England refinement. She swept through the entrance flanked by her two dearest companions, Josephine Channing and Annabel Sinclair, each adorned in pale silks and the quiet confidence of women born to wealth. Their arrival created an almost imperceptible stir. After all, Caroline Cabot had long been the subject of drawing-room whispers, the belle of Boston society, the one who might have been Lady Hollingsworth had timing and fate aligned differently. Years earlier, when Caroline had been no more than 11, her mother, Mrs. Marilyn Cabot of Beacon Hill, had taken tea at Hollingsworth Estate, where she delicately suggested that their families might one day be joined. It had been an entirely proper conversation, carried out in the way such things were, with compliments, smiles, and just enough implication to leave no doubt as to her meaning. The Countess of Grantham had received her graciously, though with a reserve that Mrs. Cabot mistook for shyness. In truth, she had recognised at once that the Cabot girl, though polished and perfectly mannered, possessed a temperament ill-suited to her sons. Thomas, even then, was thoughtful and restrained, a boy inclined to reflection, not arrogance. And the Countess knew instinctively that a wife raised to believe herself entitled to admiration would make him miserable. She had said as much to her husband afterward, in the privacy of their drawing-room. And though the Earl had been puzzled by her refusal to pursue the match, he deferred to her judgment. Mrs. Cabot, however, had left that afternoon convinced the matter was merely postponed. For years afterward, she reminded her daughter that she had almost been promised to a future Viscount. That had circumstances been different, she might have been destined for a coronet, and not merely a calling card. And so Caroline Cabot was raised to believe that her marriage must equal, if not surpass, the one she had nearly been granted. She and her friends marvelled at the splendour of Weatherby House, their voices lilting with admiration as they remarked on the chance to finally see Lydia Weatherby again, after her years abroad at school in England. And more than that, to see for themselves the man who had so thoroughly captured her future and their curiosity. Inside, the grand ballroom shimmered like something out of a fairy tale. Golden chandeliers, each one a glittering masterpiece of cut crystal and candlelight, hung from the vaulted ceiling, illuminating the room with a soft, opulent glow. Silk-draped walls in rich shades of champagne and ivory framed the scene, while tall arrangements of fresh white roses, hydrangeas, and calla lilies perfumed the air. Servants in pristine black and white attire moved swiftly through the sea of guests, offering crystal flutes of chilled champagne and trays of delicate amuse-bouches. It was extravagance at its finest. A night where deals were brokered in hushed tones, where ambitions were hidden behind polite smiles, and where the destinies of the elite were quietly decided over waltzes and whispered promises. Upstairs, in her lavish suite, Kate stood before the ornate floor-length mirror, staring at the girl in cream and gold silk. The gown was a masterpiece, every stitch a testament to wealth and status. The bodice was intricately embroidered with golden thread, delicate floral motifs curling along the fine fabric, shimmering under the flickering candlelight. The skirts cascaded in waves of silk and lace, moving like liquid gold with the slightest turn. Margaret had spared no expense, ensuring that Lydia Weatherby would shine as the undeniable star of the evening. But it wasn't the grandeur of the gown that left Kate breathless. It was the uncanny familiarity of it. Her mind drifted back to that first night on Titanic, to Lydia fastening a necklace around her throat, laughing mischievously as they stepped into the first-class lounge, a world to which Kate had never belonged. She had worn Lydia's gown that night too. A presence shifted behind her. Evelyn. She stepped forward in silent efficiency, her movements graceful as she fastened a diamond necklace around Kate's neck. The cold weight of it sent a shiver down Kate's spine.
"You look like a queen,"
Evelyn murmured. Kate met her gaze in the mirror, a flicker of uncertainty passing between them.
"I feel like an imposter."
Evelyn's lips barely quirked, her hands lingering for a moment on Kate's shoulders.
"Maybe, but tonight, the world will be introduced to Miss Lydia Weatherby, the future Lady Hollingsworth.
Her voice dropped to a whisper.
Make of it what you will."
Downstairs, the grand dining hall was an oasis of decadence. Tables lined with polished silver, fine bone china embossed with gold, and centerpieces overflowing with cascading white roses and flickering candelabras. The room hummed with conversation, a mixture of refined elegance and hushed indulgence. As the guests took their seats for dinner, Kate found herself placed uncomfortably close to Caroline Cabot, an unfamiliar face, yet a name she recognized from Lydia's world. She was a vision in pale blue satin, her golden curls swept elegantly into an intricate twist, secured with a spray of pearl-tipped pins and feathers. She was Boston Brahmin through and through, bred for perfection, raised among the most elite of American aristocracy. They were surrounded by Caroline's closest confidants, or, at least, women who had earned their place beside her, belonging to the echelons of high society. They tittered and tattered amongst themselves like schoolgirls, observing the array of finery, each one taking their turns, commenting on how lovely Caroline appeared.
"You look so lovely tonight, Caroline."
A vision.
"Caroline, you are stunning."
And remarking in whispers that she should have been the one at Thomas's side. And Caroline, she had been watching Thomas all evening. Just before the soup course was served, a ripple of admiration swept down the long line of tables as footmen revealed the evening's centerpiece, a lavish arrangement of tropical fruits, glistening beneath the glow of a dozen candelabras. At its heart, rising like jeweled crowns above the rest, stood 2 pineapples, their spiked green tops artfully fanned, their golden skin polished to a shine. Gasps and murmurs followed, subtle but unmistakable.
"Imported at great expense, no doubt,"
Aunt Winifred remarked, as she and Aunt Beatrice took their seats next to a gaggle of guests, who all gushed excitedly. Kate blinked, momentarily stunned. Pineapples. Not just 1, but 2. In this glittering hall of crystal and gold, amidst the Duchess silks and silver flatware, that was what made the room pause. Margaret, of course, was already in full stride, her voice lilting with pride as she addressed a small group near the head of the table.
"The Weatherbys are quite devoted to their guests,"
she said with a practiced laugh.
2 pineapples from the Caribbean. Imagine the trouble. But isn't it just the loveliest statement of welcome?
The guests nodded, impressed. Of course they were. The pineapple, after all, was the ultimate emblem of hospitality among the East Coast elite, a golden promise that no expense had been spared. Kate's gaze lingered on the twin fruits, towering above sugared oranges and plump purple figs. They were beautiful, certainly, and utterly performative. At the centre of the feast, nestled between roasted pheasant and decadent seafood platters, were small golden-crusted meat pies, each one filled with rich, spiced filling, wrapped in buttery, flaky perfection. Every bite was born of hands that had kneaded dough on a wooden table in Titchfield, teaching a young Catherine cook that food was love and labour and legacy. And here it was, dressed in gilded perfection, set before the most powerful families of New York and New England, as if it had always belonged to their world. The pineapples might have dazzled the eye, but it was her mother's recipe that lingered on the tongue. Not Margaret's, not the Weatherby's, but Nanny Warren Cook's, faithfully passed down, perfected in a quiet kitchen half a world away from chandeliers and silver. Kate watched as a gentleman at the next table took a bite, his eyes widening in unexpected delight.
Exquisite.
He proclaimed, dabbing at his lips with a linen napkin.
A surprising delight.
Margaret, practically glowing with pride, lifted her chin.
Lydia was taught at one of the finest boarding schools in England, and she loves to bake.
Kate stilled, swallowing the odd weight of emotion rising in her chest. Here, in this palace of privilege, the elite of society dined on a meal born in a humble bakery in Titchfield. A part of her real past had somehow woven itself into the illusion. As the dinner plates were cleared and champagne flutes were refilled, Caroline Cabot leaned toward Kate, lowering her voice just enough for Kate to hear.
Thomas is quite a remarkable man, isn't he?
Caroline mused, absently tracing the stem of her glass with a gloved fingertip. Kate glanced up, meeting the other woman's gaze.
I suppose he is,
she replied carefully. Caroline's lips curved, though there was something sharp beneath her smile.
It's just so surprising,
she continued airily.
I had thought his tastes were more traditional. Old families, old money.
She let the words settle, watching Kate's reaction with quiet amusement. Kate forced a pleasant smile, ignoring the prickle of heat rising to her cheeks.
Perhaps Lord Hollingsworth values more than just lineage.
Caroline chuckled, taking a delicate sip of her champagne.
Lydia, my dear, you mustn't confuse romance with relevance, she said sweetly. Lineage is everything.
She paused.
Though I will say, Lord Hollingsworth is rather dashing, isn't he? I do envy you, at least for that.
As Caroline leaned closer, her voice honeyed and sharp, her friends at the next table leaned closer too, Josephine and Annabel exchanging quick conspiratorial glances. Their fans fluttered like restless wings, and behind the polite laughter came whispers, half-hidden giggles, and the unmistakable thrill of gossip freshly born. Kate could feel their eyes upon her, the collective gaze of women who measured everything from lineage to lace, and who understood perfectly well that every word Caroline spoke was meant to be heard. Kate said nothing, only nodded, knowing any response would feed Caroline's amusement. Her gaze drifted down the table to where Thomas sat, among the gentlemen, his posture easy, his expression composed. He was speaking politely with the guests around him, but his eyes sought hers now and then across the glittering table. Each time their gazes met, he offered the faintest smile, steady, reassuring, before turning back to his company as if nothing had passed between them. It was a small thing, but in that moment, beneath the laughter and the hum of conversation, it steadied her. As Kate continued to watch him, he looked back in her direction. She smiled, but then realized it wasn't her he was acknowledging. Instead, he gave a small, courteous nod, not meant for her. She followed his gaze and found Caroline smiling back at him and nodding, her expression demure, lips curved in a practiced smile that hinted at familiarity. Kate turned away, her pulse tightening despite herself. In that moment, she wished she hadn't looked his way at all. Caroline was beautiful, wealthy, well-bred, and she had made it abundantly clear. Had Thomas not been otherwise engaged, she would have gladly taken the position herself. With dinner now finished, the guests moved toward the opulent ballroom, where a string quartet had begun a sweeping waltz. The moment had arrived. At the head of the room, Charles Weatherby lifted his gold-rimmed champagne glass, his voice booming with pride, carrying effortlessly over the hushed anticipation of the gathered guests.
"Ladies and gentlemen,"
he began, his tone rich with pride.
"Tonight, we not only celebrate the long-awaited return of our beloved daughter, but we also have the distinct pleasure of announcing her engagement to a most esteemed gentleman. It is with great joy that I present to you Miss Lydia Weatherby and her fiancé, the Viscount, Lord Thomas Hollingsworth."
A warm round of applause rippled through the room, glasses raised in tribute, the golden candlelight glinting off polished crystal. Charles allowed a moment for the applause to settle before continuing, his expression one of deep satisfaction.
"It brings me immense joy to share that in just 1 week's time, on Saturday, the 4th of May. Our Lydia and Lord Hollingsworth will be wed at St. Thomas Church in New York City, a most fitting setting for such a blessed occasion. Following the ceremony, it will be our great pleasure to welcome you all to a grand reception at Delmonico's, where we shall celebrate the beginning of their life together in true style."
He raised his glass higher, a knowing smile playing at his lips.
To Lydia and Thomas.
To Lydia
and Thomas.
The crowd echoed his words, lifting their glasses in a celebratory toast as music swelled in the background, and Kate, standing beside Thomas, her fingers wrapped lightly around the stem of her own, untouched champagne flute, felt the weight of expectation settle even heavier upon her shoulders. Charles lifted his glass higher, his gaze sweeping across the glittering throng.
To Lord Hollingsworth, and to the future Lady Hollingsworth,
he declared, his voice filled with conviction.
And Lord and Lady Hollingsworth.
And to the future Lady Hollingsworth.
May their future be as bright as the love that has brought them together.
A resounding cheer followed, champagne flutes clinking as guests echoed the toast, the evening now charged with the thrill of impending nuptials. Kate inhaled sharply, and then Thomas was before her. He extended his hand, his touch warm, steady. Her own hand trembled as she placed it in his. And together, they stepped into the center of the ballroom. The first notes of the waltz swelled through the air. Thomas turned toward her, his gaze searching.
Are you nervous?
He murmured, his breath warm against her cheek. Kate exhaled slowly, her voice barely above a whisper.
Just a little bit.
His grip tightened at her waist.
I promise you, I'll take care of you.
He assured her. And then they moved. They became the dance. Their bodies glided across the ballroom floor in perfect, effortless harmony. Kate could feel the weight of every eye upon her, the admiration, the approval, the illusion she had perfected. She was no longer Kate Cook, the baker's daughter. She was Lydia Weatherby, the future Lady Hollingsworth. And the world believed it. As the final notes of the waltz faded into silence, Thomas leaned in, his lips hovering dangerously close to her ear.
Darling, you have made me the happiest man in the world.
The applause wrapped around her like silk, soft, gleaming, and like chains. Kate smiled, the perfect, poised, practiced smile. But deep in her chest, her heart was pounding. She had accepted the engagement. She had done what was expected. And yet, as Thomas escorted her upstairs at the end of the evening, pressing a soft kiss to her hand, whispering that he was looking forward to forever, Kate knew. This was never supposed to happen. Lydia had intended for her to stay at Weatherby House for only a night or two, just long enough for her to escape with Gideon. Kate had never planned to stay at Weatherby House. She hadn't planned for the deception to carry on this long. Indeed, she had never planned for Thomas Hollingsworth. And now she didn't know how to leave. She wasn't sure she wanted to leave, and for once it felt like she might actually have a choice. even if that too was a lie. The following afternoon at the stately Cabot residence in New York, the crème de la crème of Boston Brahmin society assembled for an exquisite tea affair, where gossip flowed as freely as the Darjeeling, laughter rippled through the air like the chime of fine porcelain, and the talk of the town was none other than the engagement of Lord Thomas Hollingsworth to Miss Lydia Weatherby. The air in Mrs. Cabot's drawing room was thick with the scent of bergamot and warm scones, the delicate chime of fine porcelain teacups punctuating the gentle hum of conversation. The towering windows of the grand Fifth Avenue townhouse overlooked the bustling city below, but inside the world was small, intimate, governed by the quiet power of those who knew that wealth was not just about money, but about legacy. Caroline, dressed in an elegant morning gown of soft gold, perched gracefully on a tufted settee, a half-empty plate of petit fours resting on the table before her. Around her, a carefully curated collection of New England's finest ladies reclined in their chairs, sipping tea, their eyes glinting with curiosity. The previous night's engagement ball at the Weatherby estate had been the event of the season, or at least it was, until the upcoming wedding of Lydia Weatherby to Lord Thomas Hollingsworth. The topic of discussion was inevitable.
My dears,
drawled Cordelia Parkman, adjusting the lace cuff of her sleeve.
I must admit, I was pleasantly surprised, given everything that poor girl has endured. I had expected a rather pale affair.
Pale?
Scoffed Josephine, dabbing at the corner of her lips with a monogrammed handkerchief.
Cordelia, I expected a funeral.
Soft laughter rippled through the room.
No, but truly,
said Annabel, reaching for a sugar-dusted scone.
Lydia looked well enough. Perhaps not quite as fresh as she once did. Tragedy will do that to a girl, but still, elegant. And the gown, to say, was it not?
I believe so,
Caroline murmured, swirling her tea absently.
Although I couldn't help but notice that the color was a shade too deep for a bride-to-be. A soft ivory would have been more becoming, don't you think?
Mrs. Cabot gave her daughter a knowing glance over the rim of her teacup.
It's hardly surprising. That girl's mother was always a touch heavy-handed with the dramatics. Margaret Weatherby never did understand the value of restraint.
Restraint?
Cordelia scoffed.
Margaret Weatherby built an entire ballroom just for the occasion.
The ladies erupted into laughter, the exaggerated sentiment of the phrase striking them as absurd. Caroline, still swirling her tea, leaned forward slightly.
If I may,
she began, her voice dripping with amusement.
While we're on the subject of things that were unexpected, shall we discuss those meat pies?
A delighted murmur spread through the room.
Oh, they were divine,
Josephine said, pressing a hand to her chest.
The crust, the filling, and from what I heard, they were homemade.
How utterly shocking,
Cordelia teased.
Imagine if this marriage does not work out. Lady Hollingsworth could simply open a bakery.
A peal of laughter rang through the room. Mrs. Cabot, ever poised, merely gave an elegant shrug.
Well, if she takes after her mother, she will need a hobby. And if she takes after her father, she will need an income.
Caroline chuckled behind the rim of her teacup, but said nothing. It was no secret that Charles Weatherby's fortune, while grand, was built on industry rather than legacy, a fact that many old money families found difficult to overlook. Annabel leaned in conspiratorially.
Well, speaking of unexpected things, shall we discuss the matter of Thomas Hollingsworth himself?
At that, the room quieted slightly. Curiosity piqued.
It is rather strange,
Josephine admitted.
Given the circumstances, I rather thought the engagement would be discreetly dissolved.
And yet, he's still going through with it,
Cordelia mused, tapping her finger against her teacup.
He must see the advantage, of course. The money, the connections. But really, it's a wonder he wasn't tempted by other prospects.
The air in the room thickened, eyes flickering toward Caroline. Caroline, unbothered, let out an airy, knowing sigh.
Oh, I assure you, ladies, I'm not disappointed.
She lifted a single graceful shoulder.
Lord Hollingsworth may be handsome, and he's a man of principle, which is, admittedly, not the worst quality in a husband, and yet...
A delicate clink of porcelain as Annabel set down her teacup.
Yes, but...
She lowered her voice slightly, drawing them in.
You must have heard.
Josephine frowned.
Do tell.
Annabel's eyes gleamed with satisfaction.
Lydia rejected him. To begin with, anyway.
Gasps rippled around the room.
Impossible!
Cordelia's fingers tightened around the handle of her cup. Annabel leaned forward.
My lady's maid spoke with the second housemaid at Blackwell Hall, who spoke with Lord Fenwick's footman, and she said that he said...
She paused for effect.
That Lord Hollingsworth came to Weatherby House personally once he arrived in America, and spent days convincing Lydia to accept him.
Another wave of soft, horrified murmurs.
And yet...
Josephine's voice was hushed, as if the sheer audacity of it stole her breath.
Now they are engaged.
Cordelia exhaled in disbelief.
He must have been taken aback at her audacity. Surely he wanted to change his mind.
Caroline, who had been watching the exchange with thinly veiled amusement, swirled the tea in her cup.
Perhaps the better question is,
she mused,
what changed hers?
A hush settled over the room, curiosity thick in the air. And for the first time that afternoon, no one had an answer. Caroline exhaled dramatically, setting her teacup down.
Ah, yes, that brings me to another rather unfortunate event from last night.
The ladies leaned in, intrigued.
Did any of you...
Caroline began slowly, glancing around.
Have the misfortune of being introduced to a Mr. Horace Davenport?
The name was met with an immediate ripple of recognition, along with barely suppressed laughter.
Oh dear,
Cordelia said, eyes twinkling.
I did meet him.
I saw him attempting the waltz,
Annabel added, pressing a gloved hand to her forehead.
It was quite tragic.
Tragic?
Caroline scoffed.
That man was a catastrophe, a social climbing catastrophe with no sense of personal space.
Josephine smirked.
He is Thomas's cousin, you know.
Caroline waved a dismissive hand.
Yes, but so distant a relation, one would think he'd be too far removed to have been invited.
Annabel grinned.
I hear he's looking for a wife.
Caroline's eyes darkened with horror.
Oh, I know. He told me himself.
Laughter erupted again.
I mean, he's a bit boorish, but...
Josephine said between giggles.
He is eligible. If we're simply talking about social standing...
Caroline arched a brow.
If a man intends to marry me for my money, he should at least have a personality I can stand to be around.
Cordelia grinned.
So that's a no then?
Caroline lifted her teacup with a knowing smirk.
That is a never, my friend.
And with that, the conversation drifted toward the next subject, the next bit of scandal, the next whispered intrigue. But somewhere, far across the city, Horace Davenport was likely still speaking of Caroline Cabot, blissfully unaware that his grand pursuit had become nothing more than the subject of a very amused tea party.